Hello, this is Jeremiah Small from Saline Consulting. In this video, we're going to go over what we're calling the advanced techniques for working with a bundle. In prior videos in our feature tour series, we've already gone through the steps of getting the command line set up properly to work with Carafe. So we'll use a combination of VSCode and npm, which is exactly what we've already previously set up. If you haven't done that yet, or you don't already have that set up on your own, then you can go back and refer to those videos before getting started with this one. In this series of videos, we're using VS Code's terminal. In the prior videos where we talked about getting npm set up, you should have already, whether you're Mac or Windows, taken the steps necessary to get a bash terminal set up in VS Code. Take a look at the documentation tab of carafe.fm for a quick link to the more detailed documentation. Down near the bottom of the page, there are some brief descriptions of the Carafe Bundle Creator and the Carafe Bundler. The Carafe Bundle Creator is an npm initializer. What an initializer does is it provides a project template so that you can use npm to initialize a new project. So as you can see with the callout that npm is a prerequisite, the command is relatively simple. For the purpose of the demonstration, I'd like to work on the desktop. So I'm going to cd, change directory to my desktop. So just to deconstruct the command a little bit, we're using npm. We're telling it to use its init function. We're telling it that the initializer we want to use is at carafe-fm/bundle, and then a space followed by whatever you want to call your project directory. When the initializer completes, you'll have a project directory. The documentation suggests cding into the project directory. We'll go ahead and do that. If we list on the command line, we'll see something that looks like our project folder, regardless of whether we use the online editor or open a local project directory from carafe.fmp12. Go ahead and clear the terminal, cd back up. There's a little detail we didn't cover in prior videos, which is installing the command line utilities for VS Code. You can find the setup instructions in the excellent documentation. It's pretty easy to do. Command-Shift-P and type shell command, and then install code in command path is what you are actually looking for. So you just run that and you're pretty much good to go. As long as you have the command line utilities properly installed, you can move on to the next step. Just write code, which is VS Code's command line utility, and write my new project bundle. And what that's going to do is launch a new VS Code window with that project as the context. Close out of my old window and maximize my new window. We'll go ahead and open a new terminal here. So now we're set up in our project. That should look very, very familiar from all the previous videos. Here's the folder, almost as if we had saved it out from carafe.fmp12, as we have done in prior videos. But I've initialized this without having touched carafe.fmp12 yet. So far I've stayed 100% in VS Code using npm and the Carafe bundler. One thing you'll notice, which is the same regardless of whether you saved it from carafe.fmp12 or initialized it like this, is there is a README in here. The README is written in Markdown, and so if you open the preview, you get a little bit more styled version of the Markdown document. As a matter of fact, you can even close the source. The point of this document is to help people that are going to be doing development work based around npm. So you'll notice already there is a package-lock.json, which means that something, which in this case was our initializer, has already run npm install. npm install, by convention, follows the instructions that are laid out in a file called package.json in the root of the project. The package.json file includes a number of things, which we'll take a quick look at. There's a Carafe section down here. The advanced tooling lets you define different file names and source locations for those 5 elements. It also has these 2 blank properties, send FMP URL and watched files. If these are blank, they will default to behaviors which for most purposes will be fine. In a different video, we will touch on what you can do with these 2 settings. The dev dependencies include our bundler, which has a minimum version specified. And then we have a whole list of preset scripts, which are all explained in the README. There's validate, import, build, validate, import, build, etc. They're all in the same order. NPM scripts get executed by writing npm run and then the name of the script. For most people's purposes, you don't need to worry about customizing those. They're all set up to do most of the core functionality that we might find interesting. Let's start out with the concept of watch. In our case, let's take a look at what the initializer gave us. Just looking at it in its source code, it's hard to see what it's about. We could maybe look at the preview. That's not too useful. It's just a default placeholder. And of course, meta and data and config aren't necessarily going to tell us a whole lot either at this point. Within the context of your project folder, you can write npm run and then any one of the script commands that are already configured for you. So we write watch, a little web server starts running on your local machine. It tells you where it's running, and it tells you that you can press Control-C to stop it. But until you do that, it's going to be running right here. So if we flip over to our browser, open a new tab, and go to localhost 8080, we can see that bundle. Make this a little bit smaller. So this is where it gets really neat. Because we are actively watching this folder with our command line, if we go into our template, let's say, and we find this Carafe starter H1, we make a modification and go ABC, Command S for save. It instantly refreshes over here. So when we're first getting something together, this is a really, really good way to get your project up and running, because you can just, as you save, it automatically refreshes. You get full access to your browser's native consoles. So in this case, I'm in Safari with developer tools on. This should look very familiar based on the earlier videos where we set up consoles for the web viewer in FileMaker. This is browser agnostic. You can run this in any browser that you prefer, with the caveat that you're eventually going to have to test it out on the web viewers themselves. Okay, so that's kind of a neat trick, but maybe there's more. Indeed there is. I want to show you the most useful command for day-to-day implementation of bundles working with Carafe. And this is the idea of using send. So let me make sure that I have Carafe open. Now we've killed our standard watch server, and we're going to do watch and send. So instead of just npm run watch, so I'll up arrow to what we did before, we're going to do npm run watch dash send. So far, it doesn't look like much has changed. Now, one thing to know, if you kill the server and start it again, you also have to reload the browser manually. But now, if we flip into our template and we make our change, XYZ, Command S save, it automatically launches in Carafe. So every time we make a change, if we have that dev server running, we will get a refresh automatically in Carafe. So AAA, Command S. Because this name and version already exists because we imported it once, with npm run watch send, you're going to get prompted of whether or not you really want to overwrite that every time. You may not want that. Let me also make the point that you don't have to have the browser open for this. If you are already at the point where you want to work in FileMaker. We'll just change this to BBB, Command S, and Force, and BBB. So the browser doesn't have to be involved in that. Browser is an option. Whenever you're running a watch, the browser will be set up and it will be running. So you can go in and use it for debugging at localhost. But probably, at least in my day-to-day usage, the most common version of the command is this Force Watch Send. So I'm going to terminate the run watch send and do run Force Watch Send. Each one of these is documented in the README whenever you set it up, so you don't have to memorize all this. Just open the README and refresh your memory. When we run Force Watch Send, the localhost still pops up, so you can go ahead and use the external browser whenever it makes sense. It's still an option for you. But now what's going to happen is we're going to send the bundle over to FileMaker without asking for overwrite permission every time. Now, there's one important caveat before we demonstrate this. A bundle ID is a required non-empty unique value. In the starter template, we just make it blank because it's just a starter template. So the first time you use send or import any method for getting a bundle into Carafe, if the bundle ID is either already taken or is blank, it will try to autocorrect and it will try to issue you a new GUID. So that's what's happened in this case where we've pushed our starter template in there. So we now have a GUID that's been issued by Carafe.fmp12. But if we flip back over to VSCode and we look in our meta, we see that we actually have a blank ID. So if we keep sending with a blank ID, it's going to keep reissuing the ID. So we're going to go ahead and paste in that ID. And this way, whenever we update, we're going to get that same ID occurring. And that's important for the next thing I want to show. We're going to flip back over to Windows and double check that this bundle ID, no, here, I'm going to stop watching that bundle ID because if we take a look here, I think I did already reissue that one. Yeah, so here's our new bundle ID. So I need to actually be watching this bundle. So now I've established my watch over here and flip over to FileMaker on the Mac. Let's see if I can contrive to get these all visible at the same time. We don't need that showing. It's still running. I hid that so we can see all these at the same time. So now I go here and make my template edit. Save. The watcher doesn't actually change tabs on us, and I still had it on the details tab. So let me just go over here and send it back to the detail tab. You can see it did pick up the DDD, but let's just demonstrate that again. So here with the watcher and the web viewer actually showing, FileMaker in the Mac showing, get FileMaker in Windows showing, save, and our change propagates through everybody that's watching. So just to restate what happens there, our dev server, which we've got running, is validating, creating a bundle file, then sending the path of the bundle file through an FMP URL to FileMaker, which then reaches out on the file system and imports the bundle, which triggers the watch event, which then anybody who's watching it gets to see the published change. If you give this a try, you'll find it extremely accessible, and once you learn how to work with these tools, you won't ever want to go back. This is really a full professional tooling pipeline here.